Lena Moore stood motionless in front of the large mirror in the staff changing room. The harsh white lights overhead made her face look paler than usual. Yet her eyes were still bright, carrying the familiar fatigue of a woman who had spent far too many years waiting. The fitted black dress, the simple white blouse, and the small apron embroidered with the restaurant's logo made her look completely different from her everyday self. Her brown hair was tucked neatly beneath a light-colored wig, and oversized framed glasses covered nearly half her face. Even her own mother, if standing right in front of her, would probably not recognize her. Lena took a deep breath, then instinctively placed a hand on her stomach, very lightly, very gently, as if pressing just a little harder might cause that miracle to disappear. In the small handbag hanging in the corner of the room was a white envelope. Inside was the test result she had read over and over again throughout the day. Pregnant. 4 weeks. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of waiting. 10 years of hope followed by disappointment. Again and again. There were mornings when Lena woke up feeling so empty that she didn't want to get out of bed. Times when she wondered whether she had done something wrong or whether her own body had betrayed her dream of becoming a mother. She had taken injections, lain on cold hospital beds, learned how to smile when people casually asked, "So when are you two going to have a baby?" And then, just as she had almost learned to accept that some dreams were not meant for her, the miracle arrived. Quietly, unexpectedly, without warning. Today, Lena did not want to say it over the phone. She didn't want to send a text message or place that piece of paper on the kitchen table like a dry announcement. She wanted to see her husband's face when he found out, to see the change in his eyes, to see the joy they had waited for so long finally take shape. Ethan Moore, her husband, was hosting a large company party at this very restaurant. He believed his wife was at home, preparing dinner as usual. He had no idea that Lena had asked the restaurant manager to arrange for her to work as a server at tonight's event. This would be a surprise, a new beginning, a moment she believed the two of them would remember for the rest of their lives. Lena carefully slipped the envelope into the pocket of her apron and adjusted the wine tray in her hands. The wall clock showed nearly 7 in the evening. The first guests would soon be entering the banquet hall. She looked at herself one more time in the mirror. Not the tired woman shaped by years of waiting, but a wife carrying the most excellent news of her life. Lena turned away, opened the door to the changing room, and stepped into the hallway leading to the banquet hall. At that moment, there was only one thought in her mind. Tonight, everything would change. If you believe that family is where love begins, and also where people are most easily wounded, this story may make you want to listen until the very end. Stay with the channel and share with us real-life stories where every choice leaves a lasting impact. The banquet hall gradually filled with people. Soft golden lights spread evenly across the expansive room, reflecting off rows of neatly arranged crystal glasses on the tables. Gentle jazz music played in one corner, refined enough to set an elegant mood without drowning out the lively conversations of the guests. Lena stood at the edge of the hall, a wine tray in her hands, quietly observing. She recognized many familiar faces from the photos Ethan had shown her on his phone. His colleagues, business partners, and people who had accompanied him throughout his career-building journey. A few guests smiled at her as she passed by, assuming she was just another server like any other. No one recognized the woman before them as the host's wife. Lena still hadn't seen Ethan. She glanced toward the entrance out of habit, then told herself he was probably busy greeting guests outside. Every year, Ethan was always the first to arrive, standing at the center of the room, shaking hands confidently. He enjoyed events like this. They made him feel he had chosen the right path. About 10 minutes later, Ethan entered the hall. Lena recognized him instantly. The tailored dark suit, the neatly styled hair, the familiar way he walked. She'd watched it for 10 years. He looked polished and courteous as always. Yet something made Lena slow her step when she saw him. Ethan did not smile right away. He greeted a few people near the entrance. Then his gaze immediately shifted behind them, as if waiting for someone. He stood there for a few seconds, slightly leaning forward, checking his watch, then looking back toward the door. Lena frowned faintly. A flicker of unease passed through her. Very subtle, but enough to catch her attention. She moved more slowly, bringing the tray closer to the center of the room. Ethan had begun talking with several colleagues, yet Lena could tell he wasn't entirely focused on the conversation. From time to time, his eyes drifted away from the conversation and returned to the entrance of the hall. Then the door opened. A young woman walked in with two others. Lena didn't know her, but the moment Ethan saw her, Lena felt a distinct change. His eyes lit up. Not the polite look reserved for business partners. Not a social smile. It was a look Lena knew all too well. The look he had once given her in the early years of their love. The girl was very young, slim figure, long hair flowing softly down her back, and a fitted dark dress that made her stand out in the crowd. She walked confidently, without the slightest hint of awkwardness. Ethan left the group he was speaking with and headed straight toward her. Lena stopped a few steps away, pretending to rearrange the glasses on her tray. She saw Ethan lean in to say something, and the young woman laughed. An easy, familiar laugh. He reached out his hand naturally, like a habit repeated many times before. Lena felt her heart sink slightly. She tried to reassure herself. Maybe the girl was just a new employee. Maybe the daughter of an important partner. In Ethan's professional world, there was no shortage of social connections. But when Ethan led the young woman to the central table and pulled out a chair for her to sit beside him, the unease inside Lena was no longer vague. He placed a hand on the back of her chair, careful, as if afraid she might bump into someone. When a colleague handed over a glass of wine, Ethan took it first and passed it to the young woman, accompanied by a small smile. None of those gestures was dramatic. They were subtle, quick. But to Lena, who had lived beside him for 10 years, each small change spoke louder than any words. She turned away and continued her work, but her eyes kept drifting back to Ethan's table. The young woman laughed comfortably, joining the conversation as if she had known everyone for a long time. Ethan occasionally leaned closer, saying something meant only for the two of them. Lena tightened her grip on the tray. She told herself not to rush to conclusions. The night was still long. She had come here with a different purpose, with a different piece of good news. Yet somewhere deep inside, Lena felt something beginning to crack, just slightly. Not enough to shatter, but enough to keep her from returning to the sense of calm she had felt when she first stepped out of the changing room. Lena moved slowly along the banquet tables, the wine tray in her hands feeling heavier than usual. She tried to keep her breathing steady, to focus on the routine of a server's work, yet her eyes kept drifting back to the central table where Ethan was sitting. The young woman was still there, sitting beside him, too close. Lena told herself she was overthinking it. She'd been tense because of the pregnancy, because of the secret hidden in her apron pocket. She didn't want to turn an essential evening into a tangle of unfounded suspicions. She stopped near a side station, pretending to switch trays. From this spot, she could hear fragments of conversation more clearly from Ethan's table. Laughter, the clink of glasses, talk of contracts and new projects. Then she heard her own name, not Lena, but his wife. "Ethan, when are you going to tell her?" the young woman's voice said. It wasn't loud, but it carried clearly in that space. Lena froze. Her hand trembled slightly, but she managed to set the tray down before anyone noticed. "Not yet," Ethan replied. His voice was low and quick, as if he didn't want anyone else to hear. "I need to choose the right time." "But my family doesn't like ambiguity," the young woman continued, a hint of impatience in her tone. "They need everything to be clear." Ethan was silent for a few seconds. Lena had never heard him fall, silent like that when facing something important. "I know," he finally said. "Things are being prepared. It's just not simple. Lena felt her heart pounding so hard her ears rang. She stood there, pressed against the counter, afraid to move. In that moment, she was no longer a server. She was a wife listening to her own husband discuss their marriage as a problem to be managed. "I'm just afraid it's dragging on too long," the young woman said. "My family doesn't want you to still have ties." "I understand," Ethan replied, his voice softening. "Trust me. Trust me." Those were words Lena had trusted for 10 years. She took a small step back, feeling as though the air around her was thinning. She needed another explanation. She needed to believe she had misheard, that everything could still be explained, less painfully. Then a man stood up, raising his glass, his voice slightly loud from too many drinks. "Come on, everyone," he said. "Let's toast Ethan and Ivy. You two look perfect together." The table burst into laughter. Several people clinked glasses. A few teasing looks were thrown Ethan's way. Lena felt the blood in her veins turn cold. Ethan smiled. Not an awkward smile, not one meant to smooth things over. It was the smile he used when being praised. "Cut it out," Ethan said, but he didn't deny it. "You've had too much to drink." "What's there to hide?" someone else added. "The whole company already knows." The whole company. Lena looked at Ivy. The young woman hooked her arm naturally around Ethan's, her head tilting slightly toward him. None of them looked around to see who might be listening. No one seemed worried. No one thought that Ethan's wife was standing less than 2 meters away. Lena lowered her head, pretending to adjust the tray. The white envelope in her apron pocket brushed lightly against her hand. The sensation made her throat tighten. 10 years. 10 years of trying. 10 years of believing that if she were patient enough, everything would eventually be okay. She had thought Ethan's late nights were due to work pressure. She had believed the recent distance between them was due to their exhaustion from repeated disappointments. She had explained things away for him more often than he had ever explained them to her. And while she had been waiting for a child, he had been building another life. Lena turned and left the area. She walked quickly toward the back hallway and set the tray down, unaware of the surprised looks from the other staff. When the door closed behind her, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. There were no tears, just a heavy emptiness. She took out the envelope, looked at it for a few seconds, then carefully folded it and placed it into her handbag. That good news would not be shared tonight, not in the way she had imagined. Lena took a deep breath, wiped her face, and adjusted her wig. She looked at herself in the small mirror hanging in the hallway. The woman in the reflection looked calmer than she felt. If this was the truth, she needed to know everything. Lena returned to the banquet hall carrying a new tray. From that moment on, she was no longer there to create a surprise. She stayed to listen. Lena continued working as if nothing had happened. She moved from table to table, pouring wine, clearing empty glasses, smiling when necessary. No one noticed that the woman before them was listening to every word, every scattered fragment of conversation around her. She kept just enough distance to avoid attention, yet stayed close enough to hear clearly. As the party went on, voices grew more relaxed. The wine made people less guarded. "She really brings him good luck," a man said, half joking, half serious. "The Harrington family is no small name." "Not just wealthy," another added. "They've got connections in the media, too. If Ethan plays his cards right, Northline could expand much faster than expected." Lena paused near that table, pretending to wipe the surface. She heard the name Harrington mentioned several more times, accompanied by unguarded speculation. The Harrington family, media, investment. The pieces began to fit together. A moment later, she passed by the central table. Ethan was speaking with 2 older men. Ivy sat beside him, listening quietly, nodding from time to time. One of the men spoke softly, but loudly enough for Lena to hear. "Mr. Harrington is very particular. If you want long-term cooperation, everything has to be clean. Reputation comes first." Ethan nodded. "I understand, I agree." Reputation. A chill ran down Lena's spine. She suddenly realized she had never heard Ethan talk about family reputation in that way before. In the past, when he spoke of family, it was about stability, about the future. Now, everything revolved around image, status, and opportunity. She left the area and went into the staff restroom. The door closed, cutting her off from the music and laughter. Lena stood at the sink, looking at herself in the mirror. She thought back over the past few months. The long phone calls, the late nights, the times Ethan talked about needing a new turning point for the company. She had assumed it was nothing more than professional ambition. She had never imagined she herself was part of that equation. Lena took out her phone and quickly searched for information about the Harrington family. It wasn't difficult. Within minutes, she found articles about Robert Harrington, a major investor in the media and advertising industry. A powerful family, principled and highly protective of their public image. Ivy Harrington was the only daughter. Everything became clearer in a way Lena didn't want to admit. Ethan didn't just love Ivy, or at least it wasn't only about love. This relationship opened doors he had been searching for all along. A wealthy family, a new network, a future in which his company could go much further. And in that picture, there was no place left for Lena. She thought of the past 10 years, the times she quietly stood behind him, supporting him when the company was just starting out, the nights she waited for him to come home so they could eat dinner together, the times she set aside her own feelings so he could focus on his work. None of it seemed to be enough anymore. Lena turned off her phone and took a deep breath. She returned to the banquet hall and continued working. Ethan was still laughing and talking. Ivy was still seated beside him. Everything unfolded as if it were the most natural thing in the world. No one in that room mentioned Ethan's family. No one asked what he thought about the wife who had stood by him through it all. Lena understood one thing with absolute clarity. When ambition speaks loudly enough, the things once called important are pushed aside. Quietly and quickly. She set the tray down and stood still for a moment before turning away. Inside her, the initial shock was gone. In its place was a cold, clear awareness. If this was not just betrayal, but a calculated choice, then she needed to understand the entire game, and this time she would not stand on the sidelines. As the party gradually reached its peak, Lena had grown more accustomed to her role than ever before. Her hands no longer trembled when she passed the central table, nor did she avoid Ethan's gaze. She simply worked, listened, and remembered. She realized one thing with complete clarity. Silence at this moment was not a sign of weakness. Silence was the only way she could avoid being swept away by emotion and losing control. Lena heard far more than she had expected. Words that seemed harmless on their own began to form a reasonably complete picture when pieced together. Ethan was seeking a significant leap forward for the company, not through its current capabilities, but through a new connection. The Harrington family was that bridge. She also overheard whispers about conditions, about how Mr. Harrington placed great importance on reputation, about how he wanted nothing to do with complicated relationships. And among those complications, one thing stood out clearly: a 10-year marriage. Lena no longer had any doubts. She left the banquet hall while a few tables were still uncleared. The restaurant manager watched her with confusion, but Lena simply nodded and said she wasn't feeling well. In the hallway, she removed her glasses, took off the wig, and put her coat back on. When she stepped outside, the cool air sharpened her senses. Back home, Lena didn't turn on the lights right away. She sat down on the chair, setting her handbag beside her. The white envelope was still inside. The good news she had once longed to share had now become something she didn't know where to place in her life. Ethan came home late, as usual. He said the party had been a success, that there had been a few critical conversations. Lena listened, nodded, and asked just enough. She didn't ask about Ivy. She didn't mention the party. She didn't want him to. No, she had been there. That night, Lena lay with her back to Ethan. She listened to his steady breathing and wondered when they had begun sleeping side by side without talking anymore. She placed a hand on her stomach, very lightly, like a silent reminder. In the days that followed, Lena changed the way she looked at everything. She watched Ethan's habits more closely. She noticed the calls he took out on the balcony, the messages he deleted quickly as soon as she entered the room. She didn't confront him. She simply remembered. Once, when Ethan said he would be home late because of a meeting, Lena happened to see him leave the house earlier than usual. She stood by the window, watching the car disappear, her heart tightening. She almost called out to him, almost said that she was pregnant, almost believed that if she just said it, everything would change. But then she stopped. Lena understood that if Ethan had already made his choice, then even the most excellent piece of good news could become just another obstacle in his plans. She began organizing her thoughts. First of all, she needed safety, for herself, for the baby. She couldn't let emotion lead the way. She needed to know exactly what she was facing. One afternoon, Lena tried opening Ethan's computer while he was out. She didn't dig deep, only skimmed through the emails already visible. A few familiar names, a few significant projects, and a few exchanges she didn't fully understand, but enough to sense the level of risk in the way he was doing business. She closed it quickly. Her heart raced. The feeling of crossing a boundary made her uneasy. If Ethan discovered it, everything could turn terrible. Lena realized she was stepping into dangerous territory, but having come this far, she couldn't go back as if she knew nothing. She called her doctor and scheduled an earlier checkup. When she heard the baby's heartbeat, something inside her softened. She was no longer just a betrayed wife. She was a woman about to become a mother, and that changed the way she saw her life. That evening, when Ethan mentioned a short business trip, Lena asked only one gentle question. "Are you tired?" Ethan nodded without looking at her. She didn't ask anything else. Lena's silence made Ethan feel more at ease. He believed he was still in control. He didn't know that within that silence, Lena was building a necessary distance to protect herself. She understood that if she wanted the whole truth, she would need to be patient. She would have to accept risk. She would have to be ready for unpleasant things. That night, Lena looked into the mirror and saw a different woman than she had been a few days earlier. No longer naive, but not hopeless either, just more clear-eyed. If this marriage was being pushed aside for the sake of ambition, then she needed to prepare her own way forward. And this time, she would not allow herself to be the one left behind. Lena began with small steps, discreet enough not to attract attention. She didn't ask directly, didn't approach anyone who might make Ethan suspicious. She chose to observe from a distance, read what was public, and connect scattered pieces of information. The Harrington family wasn't hard to find. Their name appeared frequently in business publications, articles about investment deals, business principles, and their consistent avoidance of scandal. Lena read slowly, committing every detail to memory. Not to seek revenge, but to understand the rules of the world Ethan was trying to enter. She knew she couldn't approach them directly as Ethan's wife. That would only shut doors before they ever opened. So, Lena chose a different identity, which was reasonable enough to avoid raising suspicion. One morning, she went to the offices of Harrington Media as a representative of a small, unremarkable project. She dressed neatly, wore light makeup, and kept a calm demeanor. No one looked at her with caution. She was just another person there for business discussions. The first conversation was brief. Lena didn't say much. She asked only a few questions about partnership criteria and the values the Harrington family prioritized. The woman across from her answered politely but with clear caution. "We place great importance on reputation," the woman said. "Not only the company's, but also that of the people we work with." Lena nodded. She didn't argue. She didn't hint. She simply took note. In the days that followed, Lena continued to observe. She paid attention to the meetings Ethan mentioned, to the times he said that everything is moving in the right direction. She also noticed the growing anxiety in his voice. Ethan began checking his phone more frequently. He often fell silent after ending calls. Lena knew the world behind glamorous parties was not simple, and if something was wrong, the Harrington family would not overlook it. She spent many evenings reviewing documents Ethan had unintentionally left open on his computer. Not major secrets, but minor signs. Contracts with questionable partners, circular payments, emails that avoided mentioning internal audits. She didn't understand everything, but she understood enough to know that if someone looked closely, Ethan would be in trouble. She carried that information into her next meeting with the Harrington side, not as an accusation, but as a subtle reminder. A remark that sounded casual, yet was enough to make the listener think. In long-term partnerships, Lena said slowly, sometimes a partner's past relationships can matter just as much as their current capabilities. The woman across from her looked at her a moment longer. She didn't ask anything further, but Lena knew she had touched the right point. The Harrington family didn't react immediately. They didn't cut off contact. They didn't expand it either. Everything slowed noticeably. Meetings were postponed. Emails were answered later. Ethan began to feel the shift. "I don't understand," he said to Lena one evening, irritation in his voice. Everything was going so well, and then suddenly they became cautious. Lena looked at him, keeping her tone even. Maybe they just want to be more certain. Ethan sighed and said nothing more. He didn't suspect anything. To him, Lena was still the wife uninvolved in business, unaware of the calculations behind it all. But Lena knew that every delay from the Harrington family meant another review, and every review was a step closer to the truth. At times, Lena wondered if she had gone too far. She didn't want to destroy anyone. She only wanted to keep herself from being pushed out of her own life without a single explanation. She thought of the baby inside her. She thought of the years that had passed, and she understood that if she didn't protect herself now, no one else would do it for her. One afternoon, Lena received a short email from Harrington Media. No specific date, just a thank you for the previous discussions and a sentence that made her pause as she read. "We will be conducting a more thorough review before making a final decision." Lena closed her laptop. Her hands trembled slightly, but her thoughts were clear. The truth, once it begins to be examined, cannot be hidden forever. She didn't know where this would lead. She wasn't sure what price she might have to pay, but at least, for the first time since the night of the party, Lena felt she was no longer standing outside. She had stepped backstage in this game, and the wheels of truth had begun to turn. The first signs appeared very quietly. A major contract that Ethan had been sure he would secure was suddenly postponed indefinitely. A longtime partner called to announce a temporary suspension of cooperation, citing that they were reviewing internal strategy. Ethan grew more irritable. He paced around the house more often, spoke on the phone in a rushed tone, and frequently shut himself in his study. Lena remained silent. She asked just enough, no more than before, no less. She didn't want to create any change that might arouse his suspicion. "It's just a rough patch," Ethan said during a hurried dinner. "It'll be fine." Lena nodded. She didn't ask anything else. A week later, the bank sent a notice requesting a review of an old loan. Ethan read the email twice, then deleted it, but he couldn't hide his unease. Lena noticed his hand trembling slightly as he set the phone down. Small things accumulated quickly: an internal audit, a call from a lawyer, an emergency meeting that lasted late into the night. Ethan began coming home later, no longer talking about the future the way he used to. Plans that once excited him were now mentioned with caution. Ivy appeared less and less. Lena noticed it through subtle changes. No more late-night message alerts, phone calls that ended abruptly. One evening, Ethan stared at his phone for a long time, then placed it face down on the table without a word. "She's busy," he said when Lena casually asked. His voice lacked certainty. Then came the day when everything could no longer be hidden. Ethan came home earlier than usual, his face pale. He dropped his briefcase on the floor, sat down heavily in a chair, and clasped his hands together. "We have a problem," he said without looking at Lena. "The company is under investigation." Lena felt her heart sink, even though she had prepared herself for this moment. She kept her voice calm. "What are they investigating?" "Taxes, and some old contracts." Ethan exhaled heavily. "They say there are signs of irregularities." The room fell silent. Lena said nothing. She knew any reaction now might raise his suspicions. She simply listened. The days that followed unfolded as a chain of uncontrollable events. Company accounts were temporarily frozen for the investigation. 2 major partners officially terminated their contracts. One morning, as Ethan was getting ready for work, he received a call asking him to appear for questioning by the authorities. He stood still for a few seconds, then turned to Lena. "I'll be home early." But he wasn't. That night, Ethan returned very late. His suit was wrinkled, his face so worn that Lena almost didn't recognize the man who had once been so confident. He sank into a chair, burying his head in his hands. "Northline won't survive this," he said quietly. "They're preparing legal action." Lena didn't ask questions. She simply poured him a glass of water and placed it on the table. That small gesture made Ethan look up at her, his eyes unfamiliar. "Aren't you angry?" he asked. Lena shook her head. "I'm just worried." She wasn't lying. She was worried about the baby, worried about her own future. But she was no longer worried about Ethan's choices. Ivy disappeared from his life faster than Lena had expected. No explanation, no final meeting. When Ethan called, he only heard a message saying the number was no longer in service. The Harrington family didn't respond to any requests. Every door that had once opened for Ethan now closed. A few weeks later, an official summons arrived. Ethan was faced with more serious charges than he had imagined. He paced around the house talking about how someone had betrayed him, how someone had leaked internal information. Lena listened, neither agreeing nor arguing. She knew this collapse hadn't come from a single person. It came from a series of choices Ethan had made over a long period of time. On the day Ethan was formally taken in for questioning, Lena stood at the door and watched him go. There were no arguments, no tears, just a long silence. She placed a hand on her stomach, feeling the small life inside. Everything had changed. There was no way back. But in the wreckage, Lena understood that at least one truth had been laid bare, and from here on each person would have to live with the consequences of their own choices. Lena moved out of the apartment a few weeks later. She didn't want to keep living among walls, filled with memories. The new place was smaller and quieter, but it had enough light and peace for her to begin again. The pregnancy entered its 6th month. Some days Lena felt strong. Other days she was so exhausted that she could barely move. Her doctor monitored her more closely due to her extensive medical history. Lena followed every instruction carefully, without carelessness, without forcing herself to be strong. During her checkups, she gradually became accustomed to the presence of Dr. Samuel Reed. He wasn't talkative and didn't show pity. He asked only the necessary questions and listened very carefully. Once, when Lena was anxious about an unstable reading, he sat down and explained everything slowly, step by step, until she truly understood. "You're not alone," he said. "We'll monitor this closely." Those words made Lena feel lighter. Complications appeared in the 7th month, not immediately severe, but enough for the doctor to recommend hospitalization for observation. The days in the hospital passed slowly. Lena had more time to think and also more moments of fear, not of pain, but of the responsibility ahead. Samuel visited every day, not always for long, but consistently. He asked whether she was sleeping well, how she was eating, and whether she needed anything else. Ordinary questions, yet they mattered to Lena. One afternoon, as she sat looking out the window, Samuel asked gently, "Do you have anyone with you?" Lena shook her head. "Not anymore." Samuel didn't say anything else. He simply nodded as if he understood, then went back to his work. That quiet respect put Lena at ease. After a few days, as her condition stabilized, Lena and Samuel began having more extended conversations. Not detailed discussions about the past, but about simple things, about raising a child, about family values, about the patience adults owe one another. Samuel didn't rush. He didn't make promises. He didn't try to present himself as someone who would save Lena. He was simply there, at the right time, in the right way. Lena's son was born on a quiet morning. The delivery wasn't easy, but it was safe. When she heard his first cry, Lena cried too, not from pain, but from relief. Samuel stood beside her, placed the baby in her arms, his expression softening. "He's healthy," he said. "You did very well." The months that followed were not easy. Lena learned how to be a mother through the most minor things: sleepless nights, groundless worries. Samuel stopped by from time to time, bringing advice, sometimes simply checking in. Their connection didn't come from a single defining moment. It grew gradually through steady presence, respect, and sincerity. When Samuel finally spoke, he didn't talk about a distant future. He only said he wanted to be there, if Lena allowed it, at a pace that felt safe to her. Lena didn't answer right away, but deep down she knew that after everything she had been through, what she needed wasn't grand promises, but genuine companionship, and this time she chose to move slowly. Ethan was sentenced after months of investigation. The sentence was not severe, but it was enough to bring a complete end to the path he had once pursued. Northline dissolved. The relationships that had once treated him as their center quickly fell apart. In prison, Ethan had more time than he had ever had before. No more relentless phone calls, no more packed meeting schedules, only gray walls and long, sleepless nights. He thought a great deal about Lena. Not the image of the quiet wife standing in the kitchen, but evenings from long ago when the two of them sat on the floor of their small apartment, sharing a simple meal and talking about the future. Back then, everything felt lighter. He had once believed he would never trade those things away. But one small choice after another had carried him farther than he ever realized. When he was released early for good behavior, Ethan returned to a world that no longer had a place for him. No one was waiting. No one called. The reputation he once had has now made people wary of him. He left the city and moved to a small town where he found simple work. At first, everything was difficult. The physical labor was exhausting. Nights were spent returning to a cramped, rented room, so silent that he could hear the ticking of the clock. Ethan didn't drink. He didn't socialize. He kept himself busy. Some evenings he wrote letters to Lena, but he never sent them. He knew he no longer had the right to disturb her life. Once, when he returned to the old city to take care of unfinished paperwork, Ethan saw Lena from a distance. She was pushing a stroller, walking slowly, her face calm and serene. Beside her was another man, steady, his hand resting lightly on the handle. Ethan stood still for a long time. He didn't step forward. He didn't call her name. He simply watched until they turned onto another street. In that moment, Ethan understood clearly what he had lost, not because of the other man, but because he had failed to cherish what he once had. That brief encounter didn't deepen his despair. On the contrary, it forced him to face the truth. Lena had moved on. She had rebuilt her family in her own way, and he was no longer a part of it. Ethan returned to the small town and continued his steady work. Sometime later, he met Nia, a local school teacher, a widow with a teenage daughter. Nia didn't ask much about his past. She watched how he lived, how he treated her child, how he treated others. Ethan's life no longer held big dreams, just dinners at regular hours and simple weekends. He helped Nia's daughter with her homework, fixed things around the house, small tasks, but ones that gave him a sense of what felt right. When they married, there was no big celebration, just a few signatures and a warm meal. Ethan didn't tell Nia the entire old story, not because he was hiding it, but because he knew that what mattered most now was how he lived from this point on. From time to time, he still thought about Lena, no longer with pain, only with a quiet regret. He understood that some mistakes cannot be corrected, but he can only live with them better so they are not repeated. Elsewhere, Lena was living her life, steady and whole. Ethan didn't know much about it, but he knew she had chosen correctly, and for him, that lesson came late. But it was real. Lena's life gradually settled into a form very different from what she had once imagined. There were no more glamorous parties, no more grand plans discussed over dinner. Instead, there were quiet mornings, the sounds of children waking early, and small routines repeated day after day. Samuel entered Lena's life quietly. He didn't try to replace anyone, nor did he dwell on her past more than necessary. He was simply there, at the right moments when Lena needed someone to talk with about raising children, about health, about very ordinary worries. They married not long after, in a simple ceremony. No display, no grand promises, just the agreement of two adults who had experienced enough loss to understand what truly mattered. Samuel treated Lena's son with patience and respect. No favoritism, no pressure. He listened, guided, and showed up. Lena came to realize that family is not a place of perfection, but a place where people are willing to stay with one another, even when they are tired. A few years later, they had another child. The small house grew noisier, messier, but also warmer. Lena watched her children grow up in a peace she had once believed she had lost, and she understood that what she now had was built on honesty and respect. She thought about the past from time to time, but without heaviness. Those memories had moved behind her, like a chapter that had closed, not to forget, but to avoid repeating it. Lena also reflected more deeply on the value of family, not just as spouses or children, but in the way adults treat one another, the way they keep their word, the way they cherish the years they have walked together, especially when life was not easy. She understood that within a family, older members don't just need care, they need respect. Not out of obligation, but because they have given their time, strength, and trust to that relationship. When respect disappears, families begin to fracture from within. Elsewhere, Ethan lived his quiet life. No more grand ambition, no more calculated choices. He learned to accept that some losses cannot be recovered. He lived better, not to atone, but to avoid hurting anyone else again. They never met again. There was no need. Each had arrived at a different place in life, carrying their own lessons. For Lena, the most significant lesson was not how to face betrayal, but how to stand up afterwards. She chose to protect her family in the most straightforward, most level-headed way she could. She chose not to turn herself into a victim, nor into someone driven by revenge. She chose to continue living with dignity. If anything remains after all of this, it is a simple truth. Family is not something that can be replaced when it becomes inconvenient. Respect is not something that exists on its own. It must be preserved every day. And sometimes, losing something familiar is the only way to find what is more right. If this story made you pause to think about family, about the people who stood by you when things were not easy, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to continue listening to real-life stories like this, slow, honest, and heartfelt, stay with the channel. We truly appreciate your presence.